First, we have the initial shelter at Noel Lodge for 30 days. Then we provide Meadowlark Commons and Fox Run transitional housing that has a small program fee to it. Then we have coordinated services. There's a lot of money spent in the community in a variety of different services, all designed to meet a need of an individual situation. New Beginnings has created a method in which people can move from homelessness back into the community and on with their lives. We start with Noel Lodge, which is an emergency overnight shelter that allows people to stay there for up to 30 days. We then have transitional housing, which is both in our Meadowlark Commons facility and our Fox Run apartments, which is a 6 months to 24 months program that combines increasing people's income and also bringing together, coordinating the services in the community. And this is a really important point, I think, because there's a lot of money spent in the community for services for different types of situations. But if you put a person there to try to traverse all of that and find what they need on their own in a crisis situation, the outcome isn't good. And if you send them to one agency where it's a one-on-one, then they have to repeat that over and over again. But by having a centralized, coordinated service, you have a place where we can help assess what is needed for the person and help them access all of the needed specific services for their situation in a very timely and effective manner. We work with First Call for Help for our ID information. We use the churches for birth certificates. We utilize DCF, which used to be SRS, and Department of Children and Families with food stamps, with the vocational rehabilitation, with their work program. We have lawyers that we work with for people with disabilities. We utilize Interfaith Housing's CASH program. We coordinate with Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence Center once a person is out of immediate danger. The list goes on and on. There's many different things that are available in the community. We did a symposium at one point where we brought in 70 representatives of 50 agencies in Reno County. And none of them could figure out why they were there because what they had to do with homelessness. And we told 3 different stories, and in those 3 stories we asked, when your agency is mentioned, please stand up. By the time that we were done with the 3 stories, everyone in the room was standing up. At one time, I did a count, and we had about 200 nonprofits in Reno County. So there's a lot of coordination that needs to happen, but when you need help, you don't always have the ability to discern what you need at that moment. We have 36 beds at Meadowlark Commons and 20 apartments at Fox Run. So basically 150 people at one time, which is another plus in the sense that rather than doing one-on-one, we're able to reach a group of people and help them move back into the community effectively rather than the one-on-one. So. In 1997, New Beginnings was turning away as many people as it was serving. And so the board decided to expand the shelter. And we did so by using low-income housing tax credits and a unique financial system that would allow us to double our services. The rents from the 24 units of affordable housing helped offset things like insurance, taxes, utilities, but it didn't pay for the program. So we applied for a program through the Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, to pay for the programs for transitional housing. And we applied in 2004, we received it in 2005 in the amount of $128,111. It was a renewable grant, so we renewed it every year from 2005 to current. In that renewable part, we were able to create Meadowlark Commons transitional housing programs inside of Walnut Court Apartments. In 2015, we submitted our grant like we normally do. We do that in summer and generally know by fall. In 2015, or last year, we We submitted the renewal but didn't receive an answer. The year passed, and still trying to find an answer. No one who applied for this federal grant had received any answers. In February then of 2016, we were notified to look online. There was a list of organizations that received their renewal and new application funding. I looked at the funding and saw that we had been cut by 70%. Then we received a letter that said that they would provide the 30% if we would move our transitional housing program to Housing First program, which is what the federal government had decided to do. Back in 2012, Congress had passed some legislation that amended the granting authority and reasons for granting through HUD for this particular grant for homeless programs. And one of their goals at that time was to have only 30 days of shelter and moving people into permanent housing. So we were offered in February of this year this 70% reduction if we would move from transitional housing to Housing First. You negotiate a lease with a landlord and it place the client in the house, whether or not they have income or not, sign a lease, and then pay their rent. There's no damages or deposits available through this program, which means the organization's on the line for any damages. There are services offered, but the client has the ability to deny those services, not want them, consequently not addressing the causes of why they became homeless. Once there's a lease, you count the person as now being housed. But if you haven't addressed those issues, those people often fall back out of the house. But as long as the lease is for, they're considered housed, and they can't receive any services, any government-funded services for another year. And it just seemed like a recipe for a disaster. Good statistical numbers, but not very good outcomes. We declined the $49,000 because we believe in transitional housing. We believe in its long-term and short-term effectiveness. And we spent 20 years putting together a program that allows people to address the basic reasons they became homeless, and by doing so, then reducing generational poverty going forward. It's a win, we believe, for our community. And having invested 20 years and a great deal of expense into it, and with positive outcomes, we decided to move forward. What they were asking us to do was abandon those 36 apartments and then program itself and just put people in housing, which our experience has been it's not very effective. If you don't address the causes of why someone became homeless, they will become homeless again. This Housing First is not a bad method, but it's more directed towards large cities where there's a large population of homeless people on the street that they can't solve. I mean, it's massive. The problem is massive. By putting people in housing, you're removing them off the streets. That's one method. Another method cities have used is to make it illegal and tear down the shanty houses. But we believe for smaller non-metro areas like ourselves, this is a good method because we're effective. And that leads to, well, how do we know we're effective? We know we're effective by, we've had to report to this granting source for the last 10 years. And in that reporting, what we found was, and what we knew, was 62% of everybody coming into the program increased their income. And they increased it on an average by $1,500 a month, which is significant. And then on top of that, 93% of people moved into affordable housing, permanent affordable housing. We have a 20% repeat rate, which means people fall out of wherever they're at and come back to us, but our statistics show that half of those that are repeaters make it the second time around. So we believe it's a very effective way of decreasing generational poverty and increasing participation in the community. Celeste came to us in July of 2015. She stayed at Noel. She'd been living in her car. She stayed in Noel Lodge. And as soon as we were able to get her into our transitional housing program, we did. She was pregnant. She had no pregnancy plan, no birthing plan, no prenatal care. She was supposed to coordinate her reunification with her child, her 4-year-old child, through St. Francis. She also was addicted to methamphetamines. We helped her with the addiction immediately. That was the first thing. And we partnered with the Substance Abuse Center of Kansas in peer mentoring and treatment. We then partnered with Prairie Star Health Center to get her prenatal care, get her baby care, and again help her with the addiction. From there, we worked with her with money management and budgeting skills. We continued to help her look for employment that was better suited to her situation, more income, better hours, ability to take care of her children. We had her work with Birthright to develop a birth plan going forward and the things that she would need for her children. We worked with DCF to make sure that she had everything she needed to go to work, and she eventually ended up with a job in the credit industry as a credit counselor, making more money. She called it her grown-up job. She now is living in Tierra Verde Apartments, and she's reunified with her 4-year-old, and her daughter was born December 28th, and all of them live independently on their